country, even if not with perfect effectiveness. And Ukrainian strikes against the already limited Russian storage and refining capacity are preventing energy resources from being stored or used at home.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with your sensei Al Bob. Me, he, it. So, here it is about 3-ish, 3:30. What time is it? 3:24. And there's a light bulb over my head. So, what do you think? Right? So here we are, 50 so days outside of our presidential election. And what do you think of that little fun soap opera with Dooney Chump and the girl? And it's pretty obvious that neither of these characters are someone who you'd really want to be president. And if you can't see that this is a charade, a soap opera, a scripted wonder, just like the war in Ukraine is a scripted wonder, right? War between the two Vlads, or the war in the Gaza Strip, or the war that no one's paying attention that's killing more people, the one in Africa, Sierra Leone. Well, all the resources, it's a wonderland of resources, right? And let's see if I can pick up. Here's this guy.
Donald Trump is now saying he is too afraid to debate Vice President Kamala Harris anymore. Well, he's trying to claim that he did too good of a job and therefore he can't debate, but we all know what that means. We watched it with our eyes and ears and we saw what went down. You want a recap of what went down? Well, Vice President Kamala Harris right now is trolling Donald Trump with the highlights for her, the lowlights for him, and she's mocking his advisors as well. Let's just start off playing that video, huh?
What I can tell you is Donald Trump has been preparing for this his entire life. He always is prepared, and he's ready to take Kamala Harris head on that date. So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan.
President Trump is well prepared for the debate tomorrow night. That is right. He doesn't need traditional debate prep.
You have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short. Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge it at all. I said that sarcastically. You know that. We said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically.
Imagine like a boxer trying to prepare for Floyd Mayweather or Muhammad Ali.
They're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
And for those who are listening, the clips that are kind of in between the debate footage are Donald Trump's advisors about what they said they expected to happen before the debate. All right, let's bring in Brett and Jordy. I just had to put that right at the outset. Donald Trump's been posting over and over again, no more debates, he says. He's giving a speech in Tucson, Arizona, where he's saying he's not going to be debating anymore. His team is saying he's not going to be debating Vice President.
Again, that's scripted. And it doesn't matter who wins. Donnie wins, the girl wins, it doesn't matter. We already are in martial law, so what's there to do about it,
Chuck, it's great to see you today.
Hey, Jason.
Chuck, you were a former squadron leader in Navy SEAL Team 6. And when you look at what's happening now in Ukraine, you probably hear what a lot of people are hearing, which is Ukraine is not doing well in Kursk. And in Eastern Ukraine, things are becoming more difficult. How bad do you think it really is? Or do you think that people are just being too pessimistic about the situation? What do you see?
Well, the one thing I regret to say is that
I joined a lot of other military analysts who watched this war closely and knew that this summer was going to be just what we're seeing. We were going to see Russia resurgent in the summer. And those cards were dealt last Christmas when Mike Johnson decided that he would pull a stunt and retard the very important, necessary, fundamental military aid going to Ukraine. I wrote.
As a prank. No, it was a scripted thing. We are fighting this war with Russia. And we're not fighting a war. We're basically doing a TV wrestling match, right? And Ukraine is the little midgets wearing capes and masks, and so it's scripted to destroy Russia. Not, nuclear holocaust destroy, but destroy it so Disney and General Dynamics and Lockheed Martin can come in and just take it as and turn it into a resource, because there are a lot of gas, a lot of oil, a lot of gold, a lot of uridium, a lot of magnesium, a lot of all pressured metals and resources, right, to run an industrial world. But Russia doesn't have an industrial world. It's not a manufacturer, right? So, I mean, they're so non-a-manufacturer that they have to get their weapons from North Korea, and Iran. Not to put down Iran's technical abilities, it's pretty good. It's ours. We gave it to them, along with the Nazis. But those two wars are the distraction to all of the other wars. There's 20 other wars going on. How did you know that?
Century, and though the verdict appeared to be inconsistent in some ways, it demonstrates that the First Amendment is a viable defense to such accusations of being foreign agents when exercising First Amendment rights. And Rahab Traveler by Alfada and Debris. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Amnesty International is calling on President Biden to grant clemency to the indigenous leader, Leonard Peltier, who turned 80 years old Thursday after nearly half a century in prison for a crime he says he did not commit. Peltier has always maintained his innocence over the 1975 killing of 2 FBI agents in a shootout on the Pine Ridge Reservation, his conviction riddled with irregularities and prosecutorial misconduct. In a letter to President Biden last week, Amnesty International USA wrote, quote, given the ongoing unresolved concerns about the fairness of Leonard Peltier's trial and legal process, that he spent nearly 50 years in prison, his age, the recent denial of parole and compassionate release, and ongoing and chronic health issues, we're asking you to commute Leonard Peltier's sentence and release him. This is not only timely, but a necessary measure in the interests of both justice and mercy, they wrote. For more on Leonard Peltier's case, we're joined by Nick Tilson, president of the NDN Collective, an indigenous-led organization, citizen of the Oglala Lakota Nation, joining us from Atlanta, Georgia. We're also joined by 2 members of Leonard Peltier's legal defense team. Jennifer Jones is the managing attorney at the law firm For the People, lead counsel for Leonard Peltier's case, joining us from Denver, Colorado. And here in New York, we're joined by Laura Meltzer Cohen, co-counsel on the case, educator and abolitionist. We welcome you all to Democracy Now! I want to begin with Jennifer Jones. For people who have not followed Leonard Peltier's case, I know he's in the Coleman prison in Florida, and he just came out of a number of days in the prison hospital, just turned 80 years old. Explain why he is behind bars and still behind bars after 50 years. Well, good morning. Thank you, Amy, for having me on. And that is quite a question and a complex question.
year, we were shocked to see the growing number of apparently new weapons that the warring parties are using in the conflict, weapons that are kind of very sophisticated pieces of modern equipment and made abroad. So we analyzed this content and identified the equipment and published this report, which presents the equipment that we believe was newly acquired. And that includes armed drones, different types of such drones, truck-mounted multi-barrel rocket launcher systems, explosive munitions, drone jammers, as well as anti-tank guided missiles. And these weapons were made in countries such as Serbia, Russia, China.
Dead. My father would have been killed too if he hadn't fled. We had to bury my brothers in the yard with the dirt and leave them behind. Killed too if he Sudan's military efforts to deploy an international force to protect civilians from the devastating war that erupted in April of 2023, so far killing more than 20,000 people, displacing some 13 million from their homes. This is the World Health Organization's Chief Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus speaking from Port Sudan.
Sudanese are suffering through a perfect storm of crisis. Over 500 days of conflict, the largest level of displacement in the world, famine in some parts and risk of this in others. 25.6 million people, over half of Sudan's population, are expected to face high levels of acute food insecurity.
After over 60 months of fighting, much of Sudan's healthcare system has also collapsed, leading to the outbreak of disease, including cholera. Massive floods and torrential rains in recent weeks have compounded the catastrophe, with dozens of reported deaths, the further destruction of vital infrastructure, more disruptions to the delivery of life-saving humanitarian aid. For more, we're joined by two guests. Yusra Abahir is Africa correspondent at Sky News. Her latest piece, titled Sudan War, Massacre on the Streets, part of a joint investigation with Lighthouse Reports, the Washington Post, and Le Monde, uncovering gruesome details of footage of the June 2023 ethnically motivated massacre of civilians by Rapid Support Forces in North Darfur's town of Khartoum. Their investigations of first-time visual evidence has emerged, showing fighters linked with the RSF directly involved in the extrajudicial killings of unarmed civilians. She's joining us from Nairobi, Kenya. And in Paris, we're joined by Jean-Baptiste Galopin, Senior Crisis, Conflict and Arms Researcher at Human Rights Watch, which has just released a new report titled Fanning the Flames, Sudanese Warring Parties Access to New Foreign-Made Weapons and Equipment. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Let's go to Yusra first in Nairobi, Kenya. Talk about what's happening in your home country of Sudan right now, what people should understand about the depth of this catastrophe.
Well, Amy, I think everyone can remember the genocide in the early 2003 genocide in Darfur, where there was outcry, outrage around inhumanity that was being seen in the Darfur region, the suppression of people's voices that was happening in Khartoum, the capital of Sudan. There was an outcry and a rejection of the violence happening there. I was in school in Sudan at the time, and though the military regime had completely censored press from speaking on the conflict in Darfur in 2003, we heard from it from outside. We heard about it from the international community, because the noise about it was so difficult to ignore, even in the city of power in Khartoum. Now it's the opposite. Now it is complete apathy and neglect. The global community is essentially turning away 20 years on, when we have similar atrocities happening in the Darfur region and spreading to the country. I got a message earlier from a source who helped us on the investigation. He asked me if the Western world was complicit, if they're in on it, because he himself is shocked to see that no one seems to care, that he feels that there's an aiding and abetting of the RSF through allies of the West like the UAE. And there just seems to be a lot of confusion and despair about why the world doesn't seem to be taking this seriously.
Yes, sir. I wanted to turn to that joint investigation you just did between Sky News, Lighthouse Reports, Washington Post, and the French paper Le Monde, which uncovers these gruesome details and footage of the June 2023 ethnically motivated massacre of civilians by Rapid Support Forces in North Darfur's town of Khartoum. The investigation marking the first time visual evidence has emerged showing fighters linked with RSF directly involved in the extrajudicial killing of unarmed civilians. This is a clip of your video report.
Sophia's husband was one of the soldiers killed in the battle, but civilian men and her family were targeted too. My three cousins and two of my brothers were stood out and shot dead. My father would have been killed too if he hadn't fled. They had to bury my brothers in the yard with the dirt and leave us behind. Residents say they've never seen anything like it, even compared to the 2003 conflict in Darfur, designated as genocide.
This time, these guys conquer the army, and then they come for the civilians. If you have a car, they'll take it. They'll take anything in your home. If you have pretty sisters, they'll rape them.
You can see the rest of this investigation on Sky News website, news.sky.com. Yusra Fakir is your voice that we heard there. You were the correspondent on this investigation. What shocked you most? This was a massacre that took place a year ago, but how much has things changed?
Well, we were on the border with West Darfur when the war started, and we were seeing people come out of West Darfur with bullets in them. Children. I remember a 3-year-old having a bullet in his head, and they were being targeted by the Arab militias that the RSF is linked to, based solely on their ethnicity. A couple of days later, this massacre that we reported on recently happened, and it was a town-wide massacre that spread also to the displacement camp, Kasab, which was actually built to house persecuted communities from the Darfur genocide in the early 2000s. So we had already seen the violence play out, and we saw it live. But what shocked me, Amy, was the videos, the visual evidence that we put forward in the report that Lighthouse shared with us, that kind of spurred on this investigation, where these tribal militiamen are celebrating over lifeless bodies of unarmed civilians, saying victory to the Arabs. They're cheering on their violence. We spent a lot of time tracking down the victims that we see in those videos, tracking down their people closest to them to understand who they were, what their relation was with the RSF, why they were being targeted in this way, and they were simply unarmed civilians. We were even told repetitively they don't have any history of altercation. One of them was a university student, one of them was a cattle herder, one of them was only 14 years old. They were found in a door-to-door hunt of civilian men of fighting age from non-Arab tribes. So to see this happen very early on, I started to feel like it was a template for the massacres and the atrocities that we saw in the months that followed. Because what happened in that town was that the army garrison was taken over by the RSF, and then they kind of sanctioned this rampage, this massacre on the town. It was the second garrison to fall in Darfur after the RSF kind of took over Khartoum. The first one in Darfur, Kabkabiya, there was very little fight, and this garrison is being credibly accused of being sold out to the army. Sources told us that senior commanders colluded with the RSF before the attack. And then in the months that followed, we see a similar pattern. An abrupt withdrawal from army garrisons, the RSF takes over towns and then starts to carry out atrocities against civilians. And that is terrifying. It's terrifying because the civilians are essentially defenseless. The army can't be trusted to protect civilians, and RSF is currently in control of 4 out of 5 of states in Darfur.
I want to bring Jean-Baptiste Galopin into this conversation, senior researcher at Human Rights Watch. If you can tell us more about fanning the flames, Sudanese warring parties' access to new foreign-made weapons and equipment, where are all these weapons coming from that are killing so many Sudanese civilians?
Good morning, Amy. Thanks for having me. So, we at Human Rights Watch, we monitor social media for evidence of crimes, and over the past year, we were shocked to see the growing number of apparently new weapons that the warring parties are using in the conflict, weapons that are kind of very sophisticated pieces of modern equipment and made abroad. So we analyzed this content and identified the equipment and published this report, which presents the equipment that we believe was newly acquired, and that includes armed drones, different types of such drones, truck-mounted multi-barrel rocket launcher systems, explosive munitions, drone jammers, as well as anti-tank guided missiles. And these weapons were made in countries such as Serbia, Russia, China, the UAE, and Iran. And both sides are using them. So we're very concerned that in the context of widespread atrocities being carried out in Sudan by both sides, these weapons are very likely to be used to commit human rights violations and war crimes. And we've actually found evidence in this report of drones used by the military being used to attack apparent civilians in the Khartoum area.
And again, name the countries where the weapons are coming from.
So these include Serbia, Russia, China, Iran, the UAE. And so we found, for instance, that the Sudanese military is using the Mohajer 6 drone, which is really a latest generation drone manufactured by the Iranian Ministry of Defense. We found the RSF using attack drones that we couldn't identify, but that are used with in tandem with several barracks munitions that weapon crates show were first purchased by the United Arab Emirates from Serbia before finding their way to the RSF. And these weapons are used across the country, including in Darfur, but also in the Khartoum area, as well as Kordofan. And so that really illustrates that the existing arms embargo on Darfur, which was established in 2004 in the context of the Darfur conflict at the time, is really inadequate in light of the changed situation in the country. As you mentioned, today, the majority of Sudan's federal states are seeing violence, and there is very little enforcement of this embargo. So the UN Security Council a few days ago voted to renew the embargo, but we actually are calling for the Security Council to extend it to the whole of Sudan to ensure these weapons, to curb the flow of weapons and protect civilians.
Can I ask Yusra, why are these countries involved with what's going on in Sudan right now? This humanitarian catastrophe. Serbia, China, Russia, UAE.
I mean, Sudan it's literally a gold mine, Amy. I mean, we've got massive gold mines. We've got uranium deposits. We've got an 800-kilometer Red Sea coastline. We're also a corridor country. And we are the third largest country in Africa. I think the instability in Sudan has been exploited by international powers for a long time. But now it really is kind of up for the taking. I mean, Omar al-Bashir, the former military dictator, made his money selling Sudan for parts. He'd already had a deal with Russia before he was ousted in the 2019 revolution. He already had deals with the UAE and Kuwait and Saudi Arabia on kind of corrupt lines, like hundreds of years of leases on arable land. He kind of set the precedent for making money, making Sudan a lucrative business for kleptocrats. And so once he was ousted, the power vacuum was quickly filled with his henchmen, with his inspector general, who is now the army chief, and his opponent, Hemeti, the head of the RSF, was al-Bashir's favorite militiaman. He led the counterinsurgency in Darfur in the early 2000s as the head of a Janjaweed militia. So these guys have seen what al-Bashir has managed to do with the country, and they're cashing in on it. And all of these countries that are involved are definitely exploiting the vulnerability, and some of them had an active hand in suppressing the protests in 2019. I mean, both the UAE and Russia have been incredibly accused of helping the government at the time to track down protesters, to lobby online propaganda campaigns, especially Russia. And this is just a continuation of that, I think.
Well, I want to thank you both for being with us. Of course, we'll continue to follow the story. Sky News Africa correspondent correspondent Yusra Abahir, speaking to us from Nairobi, Kenya, a Sudanese journalist, and Jean-Baptiste Galopin, senior crisis, conflict, and
So there you go. It's all across the world. This is not just the United States, not just Ukraine and Russia. It's not just Israel and the Gaza Strip and Palestinians. We are being cold, and whether it's a alien species or just greedy cockroaches from here, I don't know. I have spent my whole life observing and trying to understand and to intervene with love's co-creation through art. And I have found that by doing so, by helping others, my life is made much richer, much better, much more rewarding. And no matter right now, I died in 2014, and my body right now, I'm in really pain because I have neuropathy and arthritis and a few other things going on. But I'm here to serve God, so it doesn't matter. The pain I have, it's insignificant, even though it's like right now, kind of a little distracting. But it could be worse, it can always be worse. I've had it worse. I've experienced it worse. I've died 7 times. I know what that's like. Been shot twice. I know what that's like, and I got shot not because I was pulling a gun on somebody, but no, I stepped in front of a gun so others wouldn't get shot, I knew if I was bloodied, that everyone in that room would get horrified because I knew them all well, and they didn't want me dead. They wanted the other guy dead, and so they wouldn't, go any further. Plus, they scared of my partner. She would come in and kill them all. So, violence is a human thing. The thing is not to express it. Right? Use love instead. Okay, kids, I got to walk, and so I'm going to walk out of here. I finished my lunch. I've been doing this now 28 minutes, 30 minutes. So I'm going to be back in 40 minutes to an hour and a half. It's about, what time is it? It's almost 4 o'clock, 3:52. So sometime around 4:52, maybe I'll show up again. And let's talk. I want to hear from you guys, right? That's what this show is about, a live chat, right? Okay. Catch you later. Love you. And go watch the other shows and make comments.